A mastering engineer is responsible for making the song or album sound good, not only on an amazing full-range studio monitoring system, but also on a wide variety of other listening systems. I mean, let's face it, most people will be listening to music on a very limited system, and we want it to sound good for them too. Now, you'll notice I didn't say a mastering engineer is trying to make the music sound the same everywhere. That would be a fool's errand, because you can't make smartphone speakers sound like a pair of studio monitors with a subwoofer. You just can't. A much more realistic goal is to ensure that the essential elements of a song come through regardless of the playback system. Again, this is something that you can and should consider throughout the mixing process as well. In the Master Plan plugin by Music Hack, there are a few buttons on the right side that allow you to model what the master might sound like on different systems, such as a bookshelf speaker or a phone. You can band limit the output of the plugin to check that the essential vibe of the music is coming through in the mid-range. Just remember to turn these switches off before rendering your final master. Either in the mixing or mastering phase, the pursuit of a mix that translates well to other playback systems can include making changes to the energy levels throughout the frequency spectrum. One example of this is to remove extraneous frequencies, particularly in the low end. If a mix has energy at very low frequencies, that's fine, but if the energy doesn't contain musical information that serves the record, it may be best to remove it. Let's say there's energy between 20 and 30 hertz when viewed on a frequency analyzer, but that energy seems to originate from rumble in the room or some other non-musical source. Or maybe it's from a musical source, but doesn't serve the intended listening experience. There's a principle in audio, the upward spread of masking, which tells us that lower frequencies will tend to mask higher frequencies. So while it may seem like the extraneous low frequencies are harmless, they could in fact be making it more difficult to hear the other frequencies higher in the spectrum. One way to address this might be to use a high-pass filter to remove those frequencies, which could potentially improve the mix on both full range and band-limited systems. Sending 25 Hz to a Bluetooth speaker is only going to make that speaker's job more difficult. So if it's not needed, it's probably best to remove it. Beyond the extraneous frequencies at the boundaries of human hearing, a mastering engineer will also take a listen to the frequency balance throughout the spectrum. But remember, the mastering engineer is only dealing with the stereo mixdown, therefore they're not able to make changes to only a single instrument. Another potential advantage to fixing some of these problems in the mixing process. Every change the mastering engineer makes will be applied to the mix as a whole. For example, if the mastering engineer finds that the bass and the guitar are interacting in a way that creates mud in the low-mid range, they can apply subtractive EQ to the low-mid range. However, that will reduce the energy in both the bass and guitar, and all the other elements in the mix with energy in that range. For this reason, the EQ changes made in mastering tend to be a bit more subtle than those made in the mixing phase. The way mastering engineer Jonathan Weiner once put it, applying a 3 dB cut at 250 Hz to a stereo mix is akin to applying a 3 dB cut at 250 Hz on every single channel of the multitrack. In other words, a little goes a long way. Mastering engineers tend to make wider tonal adjustments rather than precise surgical adjustments, although that's not a hard fast rule. You can see that the Master Plan plugin offers 3 bands of EQ for tonal shaping: low frequency, mid frequency, and high frequency, with a high, mid, and low frequency selection switch for the mid band. These settings can be used to make adjustments up to plus or minus 8 dB, so the mix sounds more balanced according to the genre and the intention of the artist. There are many ways to use EQ in the mastering process, whether it's a creative enhancement of a specific frequency range with a boost, or a cut to reduce the masking effects of a specific frequency range, or anything else. Don't forget that this is a science and an art. So I'd recommend downloading the free demo of the plugin to experiment within your own music. Master Plan offers ways to shape the frequency balance with more control for those who know how to achieve the desired effect, but it also offers simpler switches that could be useful for both advanced engineers and beginners, such as the clean switch to remove the mud in the lows, and the calm switch to tame the harsh high frequency buildup. When you engage each switch, you'll see a slider to adjust the amount of each effect. Just like cleaning up the small technical errors in the beginning can help make a mastering engineer's job easier later on in the process, so can balancing the energy throughout the frequency spectrum. This is particularly helpful when the mastering engineer intends to limit the dynamic range of the music. Think about the behavior of an EQ and a compressor working together. If there are frequency imbalances in the signal prior to reaching the compressor, the most prominent frequencies will trigger the compressor's threshold. By first reducing the energy in a particular frequency range with EQ, you can potentially improve the performance of the compressor that comes afterward. This isn't to say you should aim for a completely flat frequency response throughout the frequency spectrum, but rather that the various tools used in mastering, like EQ and dynamics, are an interconnected system and should be approached as such.